Hi gang, it's time for the moment we've been waiting for. Da da la da 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 la da 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 la da da ch da 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 di da di da di da di da di da 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 di 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 da da. Presenting the ranking video, which I've probably had planned since my Alice in Wonderland review and is what I've been looking forward to the most. The classic era, at least that's what I call it, contains 13 full-length animated movies, all of which were oversaw by the big man himself before his death from lung cancer in 1966. The era lasted for 3 decades, starting from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, released in 1937, to The Jungle Book, released in 1967. Although this era is respected and talked about, it doesn't get the amount of attention it deserves, which is probably because a lot of what it contains is pretty dated, and the fact that everyone's focus is steered towards Disney's two renaissances. And even though I acknowledge the wartime era, which was between Bambi and Cinderella, I still consider the classic era to be a whole instead of splitting it into two like everyone else. And the reason for this is because I generally don't see these cartoons as full-length movies. I just see them as a collection of short films and nothing more, and if I were to review them individually, the video's runtime would be extremely short. But I have a separate ranking video for that on my bucket list. So before we get into the really good movies, let's talk about the weakest cookie in the batch.
Hey! Listen!
To be honest, I didn't even rewatch this for the ranking. I cannot express the rage I felt with Peter Pan. I hated it as a child, but while I consider it alright as an adult, I still can't stand it. It is the worst of this era, and here we go, here comes the Peter Pan fans unsubscribing. Please let me explain! Peter Pan as a protagonist is awful, because he isn't a nice guy. He's not a saint. He doesn't learn from anything. He isn't even a protagonist in the source material. Disney, you've been adding gruesome and racist shit into your movies. Was it so hard to turn Peter Pan into a twist villain? That would have been groundbreaking. But this is preposterous. How could you not sense that Peter Pan being an asshole would make him a poor role model? I'll take Once Upon a Time any day. Wendy is likable because she's the only one to see this, but her interactions with Peter Griffin is tragic. It almost turns into Stockholm Syndrome. The Lost Boys are dry and bland as paint, Michael doesn't do anything, John is boring as Dinosaur 2000, and Captain Hook isn't as great as what people say. In fact, he's pretty lame. Even though I spent what felt like half an hour explaining this in my Peter Pan review, I'm going to mention it again since it's basically the movie's main subject. Every character treats Neverland like Disney World. In my eyes, Neverland is extremely boring and isolated as hell. There is nothing distinguishable about the island except for a few uninteresting locations. The f***ing Jungle Book had more distinguishable locations. The songs are fairly decent though, like Your Mother and Mine and You Can Fly are great, but something like Elegant Captain Hook and What Makes the Red Man Red just feels like filler. And I want everyone to know that Peter Pan isn't the worst Disney movie out there. There's plenty of hot shit roaming the streets like zombies, but Peter Pan just isn't my favorite, and my opinion probably won't change anytime soon. Yes, I mean it.
I'm so hungry I could eat a whole elephant.
Dumbo is kind of bad. Wait a minute, didn't I rate Peter Pan higher than this?
You are correct, sir.
This movie, which was originally going to be in last place, raises more important questions than Pinocchio that really need to be answered. But it's not like the circus is boring unlike Neverland, and the assholes of the movie aren't the protagonists. It's this adorable baby elephant and what's-his-name who works harder for the infant's happiness more than Jiminy does. But the story feels very bland and feels like it's wasting its time here and there. Like, the only reason they added that pink elephant scene was so Dumbo could get drunk and accidentally fly. There's probably at least 10 other solutions than that. Yes, we do get some cute moments like the stork scene and the incredibly sad baby mine moment, but most of the movie is forgettable and the universe goes all over the place. Why does Casey Jr. have a face? Is this Florida or the island of frickin' Sodor? Dumbo has, without a doubt, the most forgettable group of songs ever. When I See an Elephant Fly is lower than okay, and Baby Mine is the only song you'll remember. Do you honestly remember We're Gonna Get More Money? I doubt it. My Dumbo review is probably the only one where the rating hasn't aged well. So, despite its complicated world and bigotry moments, it doesn't deserve a 3 out of 10 and instead gets a 4, but they still should have done better.
His little wooden puppet. I'm not a puppet. I'm a real boy.
Yes, Pinocchio, what a classic. Kids smoking cigars, playing pool, saying jackass, yeah, I'm definitely showing this to my kids. Whatever, Pinocchio's right. The movie has great pacing, I'll say that, but the universe within the film is questionable and complicated as hell. Wait, why did I even say complicated? Nothing is explained. How are the kids turning into donkeys? Why is Foxy and Felix anthropomorphic? How powerful is the Blue Fairy, and what's her origin? Bit more with the Blue Fairy and her origins, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get something in the live-action remake. Excusing all that, though, you might find Pinocchio very entertaining. The coachman is underrated, given how he's the only villain that didn't lose in the end, and Honest John and Gideon are fucking hilarious. Though I feel that the movie's message, which is temptation, isn't properly explained to the point where kids can't figure it out on their own. Easily what they could have done was explore the subject of lying a bit more, which can fall under the temptation subject, but they didn't do this and instead focused on fear. You'll find a lot of this in Pinocchio: slavery, black market, killer whales, shifty strangers, and death. As I mentioned with Dumbo, Jiminy is a weak mentor since he gives up on Pinocchio so many times and does nothing during the monstro part, so he gets a thumbs down. But with Pinocchio, something I neglected to say way back when is how much of a realistic kid he is. He isn't perfect, but he's gullible and decides to cause trouble like any other kid his age. So, good job, Disney. But that's really all I can say about Pinocchio. The movie's universe obviously wasn't focused towards logic, so we can pretty much cut it off with nitpicks. But it doesn't save the film from being ranked higher because, again, its message wasn't done right, and Jiminy fails as a mentor figure because he simply didn't do his job. I really don't blame my sister for dropping out of this project and deciding to move on to other things, because with stuff like Peter Pan, Dumbo, and Pinocchio, you're really not missing much. And to top it all off, the songs aren't exactly groundbreaking, though they're definitely better than Dumbo's lame soundtrack. Who the f*** remembers we're gonna get more money? On a positive note now that I remembered, you have to give praise to the writers for transforming the messed up source material into something visually beautiful and suitable for children. Seriously, look up the source material if you think you can handle it.
Ooh, what kind of pies? Apple, my favorite.
Once upon a time, Walt Disney inspired to make a full-length cartoon on the Grimm's fairy tale, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. People didn't take him seriously since they wanted to make cartoons that make you laugh. And who's laughing now? Yeah, my opinions on this movie hadn't changed at all, other than one question. Why couldn't Queen Grimhild, yes that's her name, turn Snow White old if she was her competition regarding beauty?
Maybe the mirror was referring to inner beauty this whole time?
That's not a bad theory, to be honest. But the negatives are small yet affect a lot of the movie. The ending was extremely anticlimactic since it went too fast. Grimhild doesn't do anything sadistically insane when she's young, but completely flips when she turns old, and the scene with her teasing her bird or taunting that skeleton just proves my point. Prince Florin is not special since he appears very briefly in the beginning by trespassing, and his short cameo isn't fixed or anything because he's then absent throughout the second act, and then again appears briefly at the end by tongue-kissing a girl in a coma. He didn't even know she was still alive. He just kissed a corpse on the lips without hesitation. Honestly, Florin might be the single worst Disney prince ever, and with the amount of movies Disney has thrown us, whether mediocre or not, he'll probably stay at the bottom of that list till the end of time. Okay, now onto the good shit. The movie as a whole is... pretty alright? It's nothing spectacular in today's standards, but it's bright, colorful, and it doesn't insult the audience's intelligence or anything. You'll like at least half of the dwarves, and Snow White will probably fall under your memorable princess category, even though others completely outshine her by 100%. And Snow White is the first on this list to have a fully decent collection of songs. Someday My Prince Will Come is complete Disney magic. One song in Whistle While You Work is outstanding, and Hi Ho is catchy as hell. The story isn't engaging, complex, and most of the time not suspenseful, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is just generally a charming movie.
I don't understand guys like her to go out in the woods and shoot those poor defenseless animals like Bambi and Thumper. And that cute little skunk.
Okay, let's get this topic over with. As a kid, I always avoided Bambi because of this scene. But after rewatching it, I was exposed to, well, something worse. I always hated seeing the characters dying every time I watch this film because I'm a huge animal lover. However, I do appreciate the message the movie is displaying, which is showing that the evilest creature in the forest is man. And while you don't see them physically, the stuff caused by them drives this point home, so I pretty much forgive this movie for fucking up my head at the age of 5. Okay, now onto the movie itself. Bambi is beautiful. The character designs, the score, and especially the scenery. It's probably their best backgrounds in this era. It's filled with wonder and beauty and even color. Bambi is one of the better coming-of-age stories, I'll admit, and even though the kid stuff with Bambi and his friends goofing around doesn't do much, you'll still be obsessed with Flower, Thumper, Pauline, and how they let her grow, moving forward with life itself. I was surprised that Bambi only had 4 songs, and heck, songs to begin with, but I was especially surprised on how great they were. April Showers feels the most whimsical, and I Bring You a Song is just so underrated and majestic. Bambi is not something I revisit because there's about 100 better things to watch, but it's something that will instantly leave a huge impact on you as you grow up. Also, the Twitter page stuff is just so memeable. Like, what the heck were the Disney staff on?
Mother, look! What's all that white stuff?
I hope she made lots of spaghetti. No.
Meh. Lady and Tramp is alright. The first thing that I'll say, since this is a love story, is that Tramp and Lady are not a good couple. Lady just seems like some bewildered woman completely lost, while Tramp sees this as an opportunity for pleasure and phones the nearest motel.
My time to shine.
I hate about every second of the dog pound scene, and you'd probably feel the exact same way if you saw it. Oh god, that howling. But one thing that I'll praise is how natural the animation for the dogs are. Like, absolutely perfect. Jock and Trusty are a more likable duo than Tramp and Lady, and that pregnancy montage was great. I love how subtle it is, where the movie doesn't flat out and say, hey kids, wanna know how pregnancy works? But the movie keeps it kid-friendly while not talking down to the adult audience, unlike Dumbo where they decide to add storks. The songs are all calming and soothing, my favorite being La La Lu, and even though barber quartets aren't a favorite of mine, I can't help but feel a little attached to Bella Notte, which I kept pronouncing as Belle Notte. Whoops. But still, Lady and the Tramp keeps its rating and stays in 8th place, because if it's a love story where the main couple doesn't have proper chemistry, that's a big problem.
I say, I'm already halfway there! Halfway there! Halfway there!
Years ago, when I was an ugly miniature goblin, I found Walt Disney's Fantasia extremely boring. But years later after growing up, I still do? Now, people are probably gaping at me for putting it so low, but keep in mind that I don't find it terrible. The idea for a full-length movie that tells the story through a musical orchestra is brilliant, and with the money the Disney Corporation has made recently, why not make a third Fantasia movie? It would attract the older audience because of the first Fantasia film, and it would attract the younger audience because of the very thing that made the Disney Renaissance come to a complete halt. If you have enough money to dry up everything innocent about Marvel, Star Wars, and all the poor unfortunate souls that went through the live-action treatment, then I'm sure animating a couple of shorts and hiring a big orchestra would be a piece of cake. But yeah, the movie's concept, music, and art is what's keeping it from being any lower and just being at the very center of this ranking. The introduction parts were pretty boring, including the Toccata and Fugue sequence at the beginning and the movie introducing us to... soundtrack? Seriously, this was probably one of the biggest disappointments I've faced in a while, because I was really crossing my fingers and hoping that was better than what I thought as a kid, but to my shock, I was tossing and turning my seat. It honestly felt like a chore, and it's not because I don't know jack shit about music or anything, I just like having a movie where the focus is story. Yes, obviously these orchestra pieces were telling a story, like the dinosaur one explaining evolution, the hippos, elephants, crocs, and ostriches explaining day, noon, evening, and night, etc. But there's little going on visually, even though it's beautiful as hell, making the only thing that's grasping your attention the music. I guess this is why I like The Sorcerer's Apprentice out of all of them, because it focuses on the story as much as a movie is with its music. So yeah, Fantasia 1940. A fantastic piece of art, yet pretty average in my book. For now, that is, because I feel that out of all the movies I reviewed so far, I wasn't the right choice to review something like Fantasia. Heck, even that sequel whose release day I got wrong. Maybe I might sit down again one of these times and actually do a proper review. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. But holy shit, the movie's length is a f***ing nightmare. As its thumbnail vaguely implies, Cinderella is better than Snow White, both movie and princess. It's one of those kind of films that impacts you a lot while you watch it, but then gets back to normal once the movie is over. I only pinpoint about 3 negatives in my original review, which is the cat and mice scenes that take up most of the movie's attention, Disney getting kicked out of Lucifer being tormented, and Henry and Cinderella not getting enough chemistry. However, the last one isn't as bad as Snow White's Prince Florin. I mean, who the hell would kiss a corpse? I really like it that Cinderella isn't a complete doormat throughout the movie and attempts to make herself heard. Except to tell someone her name, but you know, most of the time. Tremaine is in 3rd place for best villain in this era and within the top 10 in general. As I said in my review, she doesn't need superpowers to be a bitch. She just uses abuse and manipulation like people in real life. The easiest weapon to obtain, which when you think about it, using psychology and mental abuse as a weapon is the most unforgivable act and that honestly makes Tremaine more dangerous. It's just a shame that her speciality was toned down a little thanks to the 3rd sequel. Yes, that's a negative for a twist in time. Anastasia and Drizella and Jock and Gus are pretty funny characters and you can't help but like the songs. A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes is more magical and beautiful than Someday My Prince Will Come. So This Is Love and Sweet Nightingale are great additions, and that even includes the gibberish song Bibbidi Boppidi Boo and that song sung by the Smurfs.
No! Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Alice in Wonderland is a crazy-ass ride, and that's what makes it good. I actually read the original Lewis Carroll books, and while there's several differences here and there, the movie was pretty faithful. Also, to my horror, the Walrus and the Carpenter was in the book, and I completely destroyed it in my Wonderland review by saying,
"The weakest part of the film is the Walrus and the Carpenter story. Although it teaches a lesson to not trust strangers, I can't help but feel that this is some kind of leftover from Make Mine music."
Also, this might offend any fans of the 50s version, but the positives I have on the film from Disney and the live-action remake from Tim Burton is completely equal. One example is that the Tim Burton version put each of the characters into use while still keeping their zany actions and personalities, unlike the 50s version which just had Alice go from one silly character to another. But besides that, this movie is great. I love how realistic Alice's dream is, and I could watch that ending chase over and over again. It has a great message about getting sidetracked and why it's important for things to be less chaotic. All the songs, except for Walrus One and Shake Handsy Thing, are completely wonderful. I could listen to World of My Own and Golden Afternoon all day. I can understand people's love for the live-action remake, but if you hadn't seen the animated version in a while, I advise that you revisit it.
I may be eccentric, but I am not a sicko!
I might have ranked this one a little too high, but unlike Alice in Wonderland, 101 Dalmatians at least takes its story in a single direction, even if it causes the middle to drag a bit, and that's instantly my biggest complaint. Right after they rescue the puppies, and before they disguise themselves as black labs, it's just them traveling through the snow, briefly meeting characters whose names you don't even know or care about. The biggest highlight of this movie is Cruella de Vil. Like Tremaine, she doesn't use magical powers to be a threat. She's just loud, psychotic, and a completely reckless driver. And again, just like Tremaine, these kind of people exist. I see it all the time on the freeway. Her henchmen Beavis and Butthead aren't exactly amazing characters, but I kind of renounced what I said a little, because after I watched the sequel, it kind of hit me the hard truth that Wario and Waluigi could have been a lot worse. Fortunately, Disney decided not to name all the puppies, which really helps since that would have made the film extremely confusing, and Roger and Nita are a really cute couple, but the amount of songs this movie has is really embarrassing. I'm grateful that they removed that one song during that car chase, but Dalmatian Plantation gets cut off at the very middle, and it's technically finished in the sequel decades later. The only great one is the Cruella de Vil song. It's great in every way, and it'll get stuck in your head instantly. It seems I have more negatives with this than I do with Alice in Wonderland now that I think about it, but I guess the reason this is higher than that is because it's just as adventurous as that one, yet less chaotic. Yeah, that must be it.
You pulled a spatula from the grease. Nope, that was SpongeBob.
Out of all the movies in this era, The Sword and the Stone is probably the most forgotten or least watched. Basically, the classic era's Rescuers Down Under. And it's kind of a shame because The Sword and the Stone is criminally underrated. No wonder my mom loves it. Yeah, War as a protagonist is complicated and doesn't work very well, but aw man, The Sword and the Stone is f***ing hilarious. The casting for Merlin was great, and he ended up as my favorite character in this movie right as his first scene played out.
Oh, now what? Now what? Leave off! Leave off!
And it's even better when he's paired with I should probably look up how to spell it. No, I can do this. I'm boy genius. It's even better when Merlin is paired with Archimedes, who's just as equally funny. Madame Mim is an interesting antagonist, but she isn't exactly a personal favorite. Neither is Sir Ector or Kay, and most of the songs aren't terrible, with A Most Befuddling Thing still being in last place. Aw yeah, it's the Jungle Book! The Jungle Book is my absolute favorite from this era. You may complain that it's unfaithful to the source material, or its reuse of animation is the most noticeable, but come on, it's the Jungle Book. What's not to love? It's the best with its characters, both heroes and villains. Mowgli isn't as annoying as what people are telling you. I still think that Bagheera and Baloo are this era's best pairing, and Shere Khan, Kaa, and King Louie are all underrated antagonists. Yes, the elephant scene was pointless, and the vultures are far from special, but the movie as a whole makes up for it. You can't help but adore that ending. That was just so perfect. And the songs? The songs. The best collection in this era. There's only two that don't fascinate me, which is Colonel Hathaway's March, and That's What Friends Are For. But trust in me, I Want to Be Like You, and Bare Necessities is just so goddamn good. I still hate how much they changed and left out in the source material, but I can't complain. It's perfect the way it is. Wait, why isn't this in first place?
Well, at least we know where the princess is, but where's the
Dragon!
Even though The Jungle Book is my favorite childhood movie of all time, I hadn't looked forward to it as much as I did with Sleeping Beauty. What an underrated gem. And to think that it was considered a sleeper hit. Seriously guys, if they had just fixed a bit of Philip and Aurora's chemistry, this would be an instant 10 out of 10. But despite that, it shouldn't be touched. Sleeping Beauty is perfect the way it is, and gives us just enough to like it. Its brilliant writing, its unforgettable characters, its stunning music, and its sheer dedication to poetry. Oh my gosh, the poetry. One Gift would be my favorite if it wasn't a song, but I like it as a song nonetheless. Maleficent is such an iconic figure and one of Disney's most memorable and engaging antagonists. Eleanor Audley really stepped up her acting after voicing Tremaine, giving us this mysterious, no-nonsense, and insane villain to the Disney library. The scrump scene was the most slow, but the relationship between Stefan and Hubert feels so real. The three fairies are completely golden, being one of my favorite Disney trios. They each have distinguishable personalities and moments that prevent them from being too similar, and God damn it! They are the story's main support and are the reason it keeps going. They are the leg to the chair, the wheels to the car, the Marvel to the Disney company. And don't get me started on that climax. It's everything that defines perfect. It beats the thrilling car chase in Dalmatians. It beats the realistic dream sequence in Alice in Wonderland, and is on par with the Jungle Book's conclusion. You think your final battle is special, Aladdin? Well, guess again, because Sleeping Beauty's in town, baby. And as for the songs, it's spectacular. Scrumps is just so good. I Wonder is criminally forgotten, and even though Once Upon a Dream wasn't in first place, it's still a personal favorite. It's pure golden Disney magic. I'm honestly thankful that I grew up with Sleeping Beauty instead of something like Minions. Sleeping Beauty may not be my favorite Disney movie now, but it'll always be something that I'll revisit whenever I want. But everything I said isn't going to get me to watch an Enchanted Tale short, and nothing will change my mind.
I've got the keys to the kingdom.
Don't let your kids watch it!
So that was my classic era ranking. Just writing the script alone was a little harder than expected, and there's seriously a lot of movies I didn't want to revisit, but nonetheless, I'm glad I made something like this. I can add it to my growing collection of YouTube videos and in turn have a better understanding of what made Disney, well, Disney. Excusing the racism and greed, of course, and even though the live-action remakes are taking over the tri-state area and slowly crushing what made these movies special, I'll always be eyeing what hot shit or cinematic masterpiece they might come out with. Only time will tell. Sleeping Beauty, you're my hero. Peter Pan, take a leap.